Welcome to The Cauldron, a podcast hosted by Ed Bolden-Greer, the creator of Vail. In each episode, Ed will have free-flowing conversations about horror, life, culture, and personal growth. Expect to hear from storytellers, authors, horror experts, life gurus, thought leaders, and influencers. The Cauldron is a place where concoctions of a lot of ideas are brewed down to potions that are sometimes important and useful, sometimes eccentric and bizarre, but always just what you need. The Cauldron podcast may contain explicit language and thematic elements not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, hey, family. Welcome back to another episode of the Ravensville Cauldron. I'm your host, Ed Bolden-Greer, and this is my co-host, Jacob Garner, a.k.a. Freddy Cat.
Hello, everyone.
Well, Jacob, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic. Let me be the first to tell you, Ed, happy spring. It starts today. Spring is sprung, baby.
Evidently, Puxatawny Phil has lied to all the good people. I have to hate life for a little longer because we aren't done with winter yet. It was 29 degrees this morning, Jacob.
Yeah.
It's barely above freezing now.
I know.
This is not spring.
I hate it too, man. I really do. But the sun is out longer, which is nice. It will warm up, Ed. I promise you.
I guess it's cool. Jared and I went to Greenville, South Carolina this past weekend for his Uncle Tommy's wedding.
Oh, yeah, I remember. You guys left last week. How was it?
It was great, man. We're so happy for him and Ariel. We're going to get to see them this Thursday. They're coming down. They're staying at a cabin, and they're going to come down to Knoxville to spend some time with us.
Oh, so they're here on their honeymoon?
Yep.
You know, Jared showed me some pictures, too. It looked like a beautiful wedding.
It was absolutely beautiful. And it was warm,
Well, I know you guys are looking forward to seeing them, but you know what I'm looking forward to today?
What?
Our watch party tonight.
Oh, yeah. I'm so excited about it. Family, what Jacob's referring to is the watch party we're having tonight for our editorial staff at Small Raven Media here at the G-Spot. Jacob made me say that.
Yep.
We've been honored with an invitation from Hammer Films to preview their upcoming Halloween release of the movie Dr. Jekyll, starring British actor and comedian Eddie Susie Izzard. So I'm so excited about it.
Dude, I was super, super stoked when you told me about this, mainly because Eddie Izzard's actually been one of my favorite comedians over the years. I remember back in the day when I was a child, my mom had a Zune, which for people who don't know what a Zune is, it was like Microsoft's competitor to the iPod back in the day. It was like the size of half of a TI-84 calculator. It was huge. But she had a lot of really classic music on there and a lot of stand-up. And I remember as a kid, I used to laugh so hard and quote the cake or death bit that he did. So when you told me that like he did this sort of gender bending interpretation of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and then I got to watch it, I was like, dude, everything's going full circle right now. So I'm so excited. And I know you guys are going to have some pizza, and you guys bought me my favorite beer. It's going to be a good night. I'm really looking forward to it.
And family, you all can look forward to blogs and episodes about this much anticipated movie. We're really excited to have been invited to do this. Well, family, join us next week for part 2 as we continue exploring the history and mystery of America's top 10 most haunted places. We will continue to delve into the frightening journey through these haunted places, from eerie asylums to ghost-ridden houses steeped in mystery and blood-curdling tales. So buckle up and prepare for an adventure that will send shivers down your spine. So, Jacob, you ready for some Would You Rather questions?
You know it, man. Let's do it.
Okay. Would you rather have a partner who is always honest, but sometimes hurts your feelings a little, or a partner who tells you white lies to protect your feelings, but you can't always trust their words?
Oh, this is a no-brainer. I really feel like it. I think I'm going to go for the partner who's always honest, but sometimes hurts my feelings. The truth hurts, man. But like, I think white lies are subjective. You know, for a lot of people.
For what for one person is a white lie might be an astronomical lie to somebody else.
Yeah, like, no, honey, your bangs look great that you just cut yourself at 3:00 in the morning. You know, that's a white lie
That's
to
a little
me.
white lie. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've dated people in the past that are like, I haven't spoken to my ex in years, and they're actively texting them. Like, they think that that's a white lie. It definitely fucking is. So I'm gonna opt for the first one. All right, here, I got you one. All right.
Okay.
Would you rather have a partner who is extremely attractive but has a shit personality, or a person who is average looking but has a fantastic personality?
Well, this one's really easy for me too, because Jared's both extremely attractive and has a fantastic personality. So I would have to go with that one because I live that every day.
Well, okay. If you had to pick, imagine you and Jared never met. If you had to pick one, what would it be?
Well, I'm going to say average looking with a fantastic personality.
Nice. This is how people describe me.
I thought they described you as average looking with a terrible personality. God, man, you confuse me. No, just joking, man. In the dim lights of dusk, renowned paranormal investigator Alana Sterling stood before the imposing facade of the infamous Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. The sprawling mansion, with its winding corridors and countless rooms, was a monument to the supernatural, a testament to the unseen forces that exist just beyond the veil of our reality. Dr. Sterling, a striking figure with her silver-streaked hair and piercing blue eyes, adjusted the strap of her equipment. Her heart pounded with a mix of anticipation and apprehension, the familiar cocktail of emotions she experienced at the threshold of every haunted location. She took a deep breath, feeling the chill of the evening air seeping into her bones. The house, with its darkened windows and foreboding aura, seemed to stare back at her, an inscrutable sentinel guarding its spectral secrets. With a determined glint in her eye, she stepped forward, her boots crunching on the gravel path. The heavy wooden door creaked open at her touch, revealing the shadowy depths of the mansion. As she crossed the threshold, a shiver ran down her spine. The investigation had begun. So, Jacob, did you do your homework?
Indeed, I did. And Ed, I'm telling you right now, I had an absolute blast doing this research over the past week. I will admit there were a handful of times that I listened to some EVPs that some of the people ended up finding. EVPs, for people who don't know what that acronym stands for, is electronic voice phenomenon. So a lot of paranormal investigators would record themselves walking around or put a tape recorder in a room and then leave. And then you get to hear really, really spooky, like soft whispering and help me type of stuff. And with the pictures and videos I found too, occasionally when I was doing my research, I had to take a couple laps around the apartment. I had to take a break and be like, oh, it legitimately gave me goosebumps. But let's get started.
Listeners, we've got a slightly different format this time. In this episode, we're going to discuss 5 of the top 10 most haunted places in the United States. We had so much data that we decided to break it into 2 parts.
Oh, yeah.
Our first haunted location is the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, also known as Weston State Hospital. Nestled in the picturesque town of Weston, West Virginia, it carries a chilling history that transcends its imposing walls. Once envisioned as a haven for healing, it devolved into a place of madness, despair, and unspeakable horrors. Today, its abandoned halls echo with the whispers of tormented souls and those who dare to explore its depths, encountering more than just crumbling architecture. In the mid-19th century, construction began on the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Its visionary architect, Dr. Thomas Kirkbride, sought to revolutionize mental health treatments as it was then. He rejected the harsh practices of the era, and he championed moral treatment. His principles emphasized light, Patients were to be treated with dignity, not confined like prisoners. The asylum's design reflected Kirkbride's idea: light, open halls, high ceilings, and ample windows. Patients could wander freely, stimulating their minds. For a time, it seemed like a beacon of hope for mental health. However, optimism gave way to tragedy. Overcrowding plagued the asylum. By the 1950s, it held 10 times its intended capacity. Quality of care plummeted, and unsupervised patients ran amok. Fires erupted, and residents turned on each other. Local newspapers exposed the neglect and filth, shattering the illusion of compassionate treatment. Since its closure in 1994, the Trans Allegheny Asylum has become a magnet for urban explorers and paranormal enthusiasts. Armed with cameras and EMF detectors, they venture into its decaying chambers, seeking glimpses of otherworldly. Some claim to hear distant cries, while others capture spectral apparitions on film. The asylum's spirits remain restless. Patients who suffered and perished within the walls linger, their energy imprinted on every fabric of the building. Their stories, lost to time, echo through the empty rooms. Probably the most notable specter to haunt the asylum is Lily. She is often described as a cute little girl ghost whom many visitors love. There are two origin stories for Lily. One suggests that she was a former patient who spent her short life inside the walls of Trans Allegheny. The other legend says that she was born to a female patient, was kept safe by the hospital staff. Regardless of how she got into the building, there's no denying her presence there today. Lily is said to have haunted the 4th floor in Ward R even before the fire gutted it. Her strong energy remains, and she seems to always talk to ghost hunters who are investigating the building. Visitors often leave toys for her to play with, which are spread around her room on the 4th floor. Lily has been known to move them around, like rolling a small ball. Some visitors are sure the little girl was just playing with the toys. Lily's spirit continues to captivate visitors and paranormal investigators alike. Her playful and friendly nature starkly contrasts the asylum's otherwise grim history. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, Lily's story adds an intriguing layer to the rich tapestry of tales that make up the history of the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. I believe Trans Allegheny stands as a testament to both human compassion and our capacity for cruelty. Its haunting legacy is a stark reminder that some wounds transcend the physical realm. As the sun sets over its withered facade, the spirits continue their silent vigil, waiting for acknowledgement, redemption, or perhaps just release.
I think one thing that I wanted to go over as kind of like a counterbalance to the friendly little cute girl ghost Lily, even though ghost children are scary to me,
All ghosts are scary to you, Jacob.
Well, yeah, but there's something really dark and twisted about hearing a child's laughter, which anytime I hear a child's laughter, it makes me laugh and smile because it's so innocent. If I was in a building that was previously an asylum and I heard a child's laughter in the middle of the night, that would not fill me with joy the same way it would if I was in a park in the middle of the day.
Same.
So some of the research that I found, it should surprise nobody, especially with what we just talked about. As the conditions got more and more poor in Trans Allegheny, people died in a lot of fear, misery, sometimes from cruelty. Yeah. I was reading some accounts of how some of the caretakers that worked at the asylum, due to stress or just, maybe they were evil, for one reason or another, got really frustrated with some of their more mentally unstable patients, leaving them chained to the floor or chained to their bunks and beds for days at a time, barely keeping them alive.
God, that freaks me out.
I know. And some of the accounts that I would read is that you can hear the chains that were clinking as they struggled. Sometimes if you're in certain wings of the asylum, you can hear people crying out for help or just screaming. which is just horrible.
Mm.
I mean, it's just terrible. One infamous room in particular is room 311 or 311. Apparently, there are people out there, maybe some of our listeners, but definitely not this guy, that spend the night here in Trans Allegheny, and specifically in room 311. What makes it pretty significant is that when you're in this room, it was used as kind of like a control room for really unstable patients that were there. That's where, if you stay there at night, you can hear whispers coming from the corners of the room.
Whisper, whisper, whisper.
You can see strange shadows moving across the wall as if people are walking past the front of the room. You can also hear kicks against the wall, thuds, as somebody almost is like struggling to get out of the bunk, but there's nobody in there besides you, allegedly. And then they swear that the entire time that they were in this room, people that have stayed there overnight, that it feels like they're being observed and watched, almost like the patient that was probably held there was being watched and observed, which just makes me really, ugh.
Well, now, I can't say that I don't have an interest in spending the night there. I do want a nice room with a view and something soft to sleep on, because you know how I am with sleep.
There's also, and this really freaked me out, there's a lot of accounts late at night where people can hear the sound of bare feet slapping against the stone floor. And then they turn to look, and you can see a spirit or an apparition just running as fast as they can and then vanish into thin air after a couple of steps, which I'm telling you, the moment I saw that, even once, I would bust through the side of the wall like the Kool-Aid Man to get out of there. You were not keeping me there. I think the interesting thing as we go through the rest of these haunted locations is the common theme that I have found is places where immense emotional pain and distress took place. Trauma that these spirits just linger. So, nope, not going to Trans Allegheny. No thank you.
Even if you lost a bet?
I would have to lose a series of bets to end up there.
We'll see if we can't make that happen. Our next haunted place is the Moore Home Axe Murderer House in the quiet town of Valeska, Iowa, the night of June 9th, 1912. A horrible tale unfolded that still haunts the community to this day. The Moore family, consisting of parents Josiah and Sarah and their 4 children, Herman Montgomery, Mary Catherine, Arthur Boyd, and Paul Vernon, were well known and well liked in the community. That fateful night, the Moore family and their 2 guests, Ina May and Lena Gertrude Stillinger, were found bludgeoned to death in the home. All 8 victims, including the 6 children, had severe head wounds from an axe. The crime scene was discovered the following day by Mary Packham, a neighbor who noticed the family had not come out to do their morning chores. Upon receiving no response to her knock, she called Ross Moore, Josiah's brother. Ross discovered the gruesome scene and immediately called Hank Horton, the town's primary peace officer. The murder weapon, an axe belonging to Josiah, was found in the guest room where the Stillinger sisters were found. Despite a lengthy investigation that yielded several suspects, one of whom was tried twice, the crime remains unsolved. Today, the Moore home, restored to its original condition at the time of the murders, is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It has gained notoriety as one of Iowa's most haunted locations. Paranormal enthusiasts and investigators have reported a feeling of heaviness from the main stairwell of the house up to the rooms upstairs. They have captured orbs in photos and videos and recorded numerous EVPs. Interestingly, it is believed that the whistle of the train that passes through the town at 2 a.m. triggers the residual events of the murder. Many have reported seeing a light fog filling up the bedroom just after the train whistle, which moves from one room to another and then dissipates, followed by the sound of dripping blood. The Axe Murder House stands as a chilling reminder of a century-old unsolved crime. Its haunting continues to intrigue paranormal investigators and those interested in the unknown. The echoes of that horrifying night continue to reverberate through the walls of the Moore home, keeping the memory of the victims alive and the mystery of their untimely demise unsolved.
The Moore home had quite a bit of really spooky and scary information around it.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of goes in line with what you and I have discussed off air and personally about spirits being stuck in kind of a loop, is how you kind of described it to me.
The energy of the spirit is stuck in a loop, time loop.
And I interpreted that as during a moment of extreme emotional release, whether negative or positive, can leave kind of an imprint on our reality, right? Some of the accounts that I read about the Moore home I actually read 3 different accounts on these paranormal investigator forums where there seems to be a reoccurring event that happens where a chair gets knocked over violently, and then across the room, really close by, a picture frame gets knocked off the wall. And it's almost, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, it's almost as if somebody was being dude, fuck you, Ed. For the listeners who don't know what just happened, while I'm talking about being really spooked, Ed acts like he hears or sees something behind me, and I whipped around. I'm trying to record a podcast here, jackass. Anyway.
My daily life.
Oh, my God. So apparently, the way that I interpreted that, it was almost as if one of the victims of these axe murders, as they were being attacked, launched themselves away from their attacker, knocking over a chair and falling against the wall where the picture frame falls. And this has been recorded as happening at least 3 different times that I can find. Another really, really scary thing that can happen when you're in the Moore home, if you look inside of any of the mirrors, sometimes behind you in the mirror, you can see distorted faces. You can see people with their heads split open. And when you turn around, nobody is there. Almost as if the mirrors, in a way, captured the essence of what happened and the spirits that are still trapped in that house. I will say that a majority of the accounts that I have read describe the spirits as being scared, terrified, and in pain, but not necessarily nefarious. Almost as if while these spirits are trapped in the house, they're still trying to run away from the person that murdered them, which also makes me think that the evil spirit is still chasing them around to this day, which is another reason why I will never go there, because I don't want it to chase me.
So, Jacob, the theory you were talking about is the idea that ghosts are energy stuck in a time loop.
Mm-hmm.
That's a concept that's been discussed in all the paranormal theories. Some believe that what we perceive as ghosts are not really spirits in the physical sense, but rather a form of energy that gets stuck playing on a time loop in one specific location.
Yeah.
The energy is often associated, like you said, with a traumatic or emotionally charged event. There's also theories that suggest these phenomena could be explained by the principle of quantum physics.
Yeah.
For instance, some people believe that residual ghosts, which seem to be caught in a time loop replaying the same scene over and over, abide by the laws of quantum physics.
Yeah, I've actually looked a little bit into this, which I find interesting. So we all live in a 3-dimensional space. We're all 3D. But to add a layer into the 4th dimension, right? That's our emotion.
Yep.
That is what the 4th dimension is. I've also seen that that's why when there's overlaps between our dimension and the 4th dimension, if emotion is really the concept that gives the 4th dimension depth, for lack of a better term, that when we walk into that space in our 3-dimensional world and it overlaps with the 4th dimension, that's why you will read reports of everybody that goes to these sort of really haunted areas feeling an overwhelming sense of oppression, dread, and fear.
Yeah. It's important to note that these theories are speculative.
Oh, yeah.
And not universally accepted. The existence of ghosts and their nature remains subjective, although we believe it. there's no scientific evidence that supports the time loop theory.
All I'm saying is the Moore House has all of the recipes for it to be haunted. You had a tragic murder, you had an evil presence, and somebody that carried out these horrific acts. Everybody died of an ultimately grisly end. Of course, there's going to be emotion trapped in the house. I don't even want to drive by it, let alone go inside of it.
Our third most haunted place is the Ohio State Reformatory, also known as the Mansfield Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. With its soaring French chateau-like spires, intricate brickwork, and stained glass windows, the late 19th century building looks more like a grand hotel that once housed the rich and famous rather than a prison.
Yeah.
However, its long institutional hallways, the massive cells with rusting barred doors, and dirty, sagging bunks tell a different story. For believers, the former prison is one of the most haunted spots in the United States. It's a place where the ghosts of abused inmates and staff with heavy conscience roam the hallways, moving equipment and slamming doors. The building's crumbling walls, peeling paint, and cracked windows are eerie enough on their own to provoke chills. Ohio State Reformatory is perhaps best known for its role in the 1994 film The Shawshank Redemption, starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman. The movie follows a man falsely convicted of murder on his decade-long quest for freedom and redemption. The bleak, hopeless prison depicted in the film starkly contrasts the grand exterior of the building. The building opened in 1896 to offer young male, nonviolent, first-time offenders a chance for rehabilitation rather than condemning them to the state penitentiary in Columbus. The community was so proud of its new progressive institution that the local Richland Shield and Banner newspaper declared it Mansfield's greatest day, lauding the reformatory for its steps towards prison reform. However, laws changed and the system fell apart, and it became more of a standard prison. In the 1970s, the reformatory was declared a maximum security prison, and it developed a reputation for what activists called brutalizing, inhumane conditions. The whole, made famous by the Shawshank Redemption, was based on a real place within the facility, an area where inmates who were deemed in need of more severe punishment were placed in solitary confinement and made to sleep on concrete floors. Today, the Ohio State Reformatory is a pilgrimage site for paranormal enthusiasts, helping earn its reputation as one of the most haunted locations in the United States. Countless tales of strange occurrences are believed to be the work of restless spirits of former inmates and prison guards. The creepiest and probably the most well-known haunting is the dark entity in the chair room. The chair room, named after its sole piece of furniture, holds a dark spirit within its walls. The chair can be heard scraping around on the floors when no one's in the room, and a paranormal hunter was actually scratched from the ghost as he sat in the chair. Supposedly, the ghost dislikes the chair being moved by human hands. Moving it to the center of the room makes him mad, so he pushes it back to the same creepy corner that it sat in for years. It's also said that the ghost of Helen Glatke, Warden Glatke's wife, haunts the building's administration wing. She was killed in 1950 when the gun fell onto the floor and left her with a fatal bullet wound.
Sure.
Yeah, accidentally. Today, rose-scented perfume wafts from the bathroom she once occupied. Cold spots are felt in the sealed hallways, and visitors' cameras cease to work until they leave the wing. Sometimes Helen and her husband can reportedly be heard talking in the area. With its rich history and chilling tales of hauntings, Ohio State Reformatory continues to intrigue and frighten visitors from all over the world. Whether you're a fan of The Shawshank Redemption,
Oh, yeah, dude. It's one of my favorite movies.
a history buff,
Oh, yeah. I'm one of those.
or a paranormal enthusiast,
I'm becoming one, I guess.
this historic site has something for everyone. You know, you checked all three of those boxes, Jacob. I guess this is somewhere we can take a visit to
You know,
and spend the night.
spend the night, maybe no, but I would love to go because I don't know anybody that has watched Shawshank Redemption that didn't love it. I actually was really
Great
surprised when I was doing my research for this that it actually was where it was at. I even found an account, again, can't be corroborated. It was just some person on the internet who claimed to have been on the set working on this movie, who said that there were quite a few instances where he would see shadows darting in and around just out of view, thinking that it was other people on the set. I remember in the account that I found on a internet board called X on a really crappy website called 4chan, but it is a paranormal investigation board where they talk about experiences that they had. This guy posted that while he was working on the set, he was, what is it called? Like a framer on the movie set. Like he would build doorways and props, like fake walls and stuff, like a carpenter would.
Yeah.
And they were working on building a facade to kind of close off this area. And before he closed it off, he said that he saw somebody dart behind where he was working, heading into one of the prison cells. So he drops his hammer and he walks over there and he's yelling at the dude like, "Hey, buddy, hey, you got to move out of here. We're going to seal you in. You got to move out." And then when he looked into the cell, nobody was there. And he said there was no way that they could have walked back out. There was only one way in, one way out. And there were a lot of accounts from other visitors that have gone to this place in Mansfield, Ohio, that have very similar things to say about it. One thing that is very prevalent in this location that is more so than the others on the top 10 list that we're going over is the amount of EVPs that have been recorded. Hundreds. And I think it leans into the fact that this was supposed to be a reformatory that was different and progressive. It wasn't just a place where they locked you away and threw away the key. That was what it eventually turned into. But it sounds like, to me, the amount of emotional release that got put into this building were people coming to terms with the crimes that they committed, encouraged to talk about it with professionals. And that's why, to this day, if you and I were to go there and ask some questions, the spirits are willing to say, yes, I was here for this purpose.
You know, we are going to be doing a paranormal investigation here pretty soon, right?
Counting it down.
Yeah, I'm actually talking to one of the investigators this afternoon after we get done recording. Our fourth and my favorite haunted location on our top 10 list is Bonaventure Cemetery, located on the 7-mile-long Wilmington River, just 3 miles from downtown Savannah, Georgia. It's a place of eternal rest that is a wonder in its own right. This fascinatingly beautiful cemetery has been described as a natural cathedral. Its stoic and tall live oak trees, cloaked in Spanish moss, line all of the winding paths, lending a haunting allure to the many elaborate and time-stained monuments throughout. The land was first purchased in 1762 by a politically active British loyalist named John Mulrine. After the American War of Independence ended, those loyal to the British Crown began to face persecution, and Mr. Mulrine's land was seized by local authorities and auctioned off to the public. The property changed hands another 3 or 4 times until 1907, when it was officially acquired by the city of Savannah, who is the current owner. The city has declared the grounds a public cemetery. As one might suspect, many legends swirl about Bonaventure Cemetery that pique the imagination of many enthralled with hauntings and the paranormal. A novel that became a major motion picture published in 1997 owes much to the cemetery and vice versa. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is a first-person account of life in the Old South, interwoven with a murder mystery that casts Savannah as its backdrop. If you all remember, the Lady Chablis, a drag queen out of Savannah, starred in that show, or starred in that movie. One of the most well-known tales is about the statue of Gracie Watson, a small child who sadly perished at the age of 6. Visitors have reported seeing the statue shed bloody tears and hearing a child's laughter reverberating around it. Gracie Watson, affectionately known as Little Gracie, was born in 1883 to W.J. and Frances Watson. The Watson family was originally from Boston. But they moved to Savannah after WJ was hired to manage the Pulaski Hotel. This luxurious hotel was one of the best in the South, and managing it was a prestigious position. Gracie became the center of attention at the hotel. Her bright eyes and charming personality warmed the hearts of the hotel's guests. It is said that she would put on little shows for the guests, dancing in the lobby and singing songs. Unfortunately, Gracie passed away just 2 days before Easter in 1889 from pneumonia. As a tribute to his beloved daughter, Gracie's father had sculptor John Waltz carve a monument based on a photograph of Gracie. The life-size statue, which now sits at Gracie's graveside in Bonaventure Cemetery, is said to be a picture-perfect representation of little Gracie. The statue has captivated visitors for over 100 years, and it's common for people to leave gifts at her graveside, especially around Christmas. The most heartbreaking part of the story is that Gracie is all alone in Savannah. After her death, her parents moved back to New England, leaving Gracie behind. After their death, Gracie's parents were buried in New England, over 1,000 miles away from their daughter. The legend of Gracie Watson continues to captivate visitors. Some say that if any of the flowers or remembrances are removed from Gracie's grave, her statue will cry tears of blood. Whether or not the legends are true, the story of little Gracie remains a poignant reminder of a young girl who once brought joy to the guests of the Pulaski Hotel.
You yourself have been to this cemetery a couple of times, haven't
I've been there a couple times, yep. Daytime and nighttime. So,
yeah.
No, it was wonderful. Lots of energy moving around in that place.
I bet, yeah, for sure. I think I may have said this in a couple of different episodes prior, but me and my twin brother used to work in a cemetery that our dad was buried at, or is buried at, I should say, quite a bit. And I got to admit, this Bonaventure Cemetery kind of surprised me for being so haunted compared to the rest, mainly because, in my opinion, like when I worked in a cemetery, it was extremely peaceful. I didn't really feel uneasy.
Yeah, cemeteries are supposed to be peaceful. But as we've said in this episode, not all people who die peacefully.
That's true. And one thing I think leads to why little Gracie is still hanging around is because she's just a scared little girl. Her parents are thousands of miles away now. Of course she's going to be restless. At least we can take solace in the fact that she seems to be laughing and having a good time, all things considered. And people bring her toys and everything. I would expect more of like a weeping, sulking spirit. But I'm really happy that Gracie is a little bit more chipper.
Me too.
I think out of the list so far, I would be more than willing to go to this cemetery, mainly because, again, I feel more comfortable in a cemetery than most people, I think.
Yeah. And we could go to the beach.
And we could go to the beach. Savannah's a great town, too. I loved it.
Our last haunted location for today's episode is Alcatraz Prison.
Woohoo!
Officially named Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, it's located on Alcatraz Island in San Francisco. Nicknamed The Rock, it's one of the most haunted places in the Bay Area, and it's considered the country's most haunted prison. Alcatraz Island and the prison have been home to infamous gangsters, hardened criminals, and, as many believe, ghosts. The prison is rumored to be haunted of those imprisoned within its cells. Visitors often report feelings of loss, of freedom, fear, regrets, and anger. One of the most feared entities in the former prison is the Thing. Not sure what the Thing is, but it seems to be an apparition with glowing eyes that both inmates and guards have seen. Reports of disembodied voices, putrid smells, sobbing, and banging metal doors are standard. Jacob Unger and Daniel Puter were two of the first to die in prison. They passed away in a landslide while doing some excavation work. There was also an incident in the part of the prison referred to as the cell, in cell block D, where inmates who broke the rules were kept. A guard reported that there was a figure haunting the block. The apparition had been seen numerous times, and several people have claimed to have been attacked by a man with glowing eyes. Kind of sounds like the same thing as the thing. The most famous haunting in Alcatraz Prison is associated with Cell 14D and the famous gangster Al Capone. Cell 14D, one of the cells in the hole, is notoriously haunted. In the 1940s, a prisoner spent a night screaming that a creature with red glowing eyes was killing him. The next morning, the inmate was found dead by strangulation, and no person was ever discovered to have been responsible for his death. Visitors often report feeling a raw coldness enveloping the room, like more than one spirit is still present. Al Capone, the American gangster, spent some of his later years in Alcatraz. Throughout his time incarcerated there, he lived in fear of a ghost named Jimmy. The ghost of Al Capone himself is said to haunt the shower area, where he would often play his banjo in peace away from other prisoners. Some say they can still hear the banjo music playing there on occasion. Alcatraz Prison's haunted reputation continues to intrigue and terrify visitors. From the chilling tales of the thing to the ghostly presence of Al Capone, the prison's past lives on in its spectral inhabitants. Whether these stories are the product of overactive imaginations or genuine paranormal activity, the haunting of Alcatraz Prison remains a fascinating aspect of San Francisco's history. Now, Jacob, you've been to Alcatraz before, correct?
Oh, yeah, man. Multiple times. I think at least 12 to 14 different times over the years. Went there a lot as a kid. I've gone back occasionally as a late teenager and like twice as an adult, mainly because we usually like to take our family members that have come in from the Philippines there because they've heard about it all over the place. And one thing that a lot of people don't think about, if you've never been to Alcatraz, you have to remember what the context of what it felt like to be sentenced to Alcatraz once it was built. Right now, we're really way too accustomed in the modern world to having instant communication and connection with other people, okay? Back then, that didn't exist on Alcatraz, right? Another big thing about it is even though we have these modern ferries, back in the day, I saw some pictures that they have on Alcatraz Island in their museum section. Well, it's all one giant museum, but it's got a bunch of pictures and stuff, and they talk about it. The boats themselves were, just the crappiest little boats. And the San Francisco Bay is very choppy and cold.
It's very turbulent. Yeah.
Yes, it's not like a casual little ferry where you're crossing a river. It is part of the ocean, you know? And once you step foot, I think I was like 19 or 20 years old. Once you step foot on the island, they've obviously built it up to be ready for a lot of travelers coming in and out. It's got a lot of modern additions to it. But if you turn back around and face San Francisco proper, you get this overwhelming sense of isolation, would be a good way to put it. And when you really start looking at the water and you realize how far shore is from you, you feel like you might as well be in another country. I could see why a lot of accounts of people doing paranormal investigations on Alcatraz constantly report this sense of dread, oppression, fear. One thing that really stuck with me in all of the trips that I've taken to Alcatraz, because it is a pretty decent paying job, that they have tour guides that have been working on the island for, years and years and years. Every single one of them has a different paranormal story that they love to share at some point. And I remember there was one that really stuck out to me, that really freaked me out. So in cell block D, that was like the most infamous area of the prison. We were walking through there with a group. Somebody said, "Is this place haunted?" And you could tell that the tour guy got this huge grin on his face because, he loves telling this story, right? Well, he said that one night when he was closing up, the guests had left. They were doing their final checks to make sure people were not hiding anywhere, because some paranormal investigators will try to illegally stay there overnight, which is not allowed. He said that he heard what sounded like the sound of fists and feet beating up against flesh, almost like it was probably a prisoner that a guard was very offended by. Maybe the prisoner said something like, I'm going to do things to your wife or something really inappropriate. And it just, really, really irked the prison guard, and he beat the man to death. And there's also a couple of accounts of hearing a groaning or a moaning of somebody that's probably on their last breath. And when he was telling this story, at first, everybody was really interested and smiling like, oh yeah, tell us a ghost story. At the end, everybody was dead quiet and was like, all right, let's go to another part of the prison, please. Anybody that has the chance to go to Alcatraz, if you're a history buff or a paranormal buff, go there. You will not be disappointed. I love it.
They do some ghost tours there
Yes.
of Alcatraz, but you can't spend the night.
No, you have to get like a permit. Usually TV show people will let them do it.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be somebody like that, not like us, just wanting to go scare you.
Not very scary at all, but a fun tangent. One time when I was there as a kid, the Mythbusters were there testing out their Alcatraz episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we saw the film crew and everybody over there.
Interesting. I always like all the stories about escaping from Alcatraz.
When you stand there, have you been to Alcatraz?
No.
When you stand on the shore of Alcatraz, it is daunting. You might as well try to climb Everest if you're really thinking about escaping from that place.
Well, that's where we get all the mythos about, using a fork to dig a hole.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, family, that's it for this episode of the Ravensville Cauldron. I'm Jacob Garner.
And I'm Ed Bolden Greer.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it as insightful and as intriguing as we did. If you like what you heard, make sure you join us next week as we continue to explore the history and mystery of the last 5 of our top 10 most haunted places in the United States of America.
Now, family, you adults have a few chores to do. Go on over to ravensville.com and see about doing your chores on social media. Follow us on all the social media platforms that we've made available just for you folks. Like, listen, subscribe, and follow wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you don't mind, leave us a good rating and a kind comment. You can find the Ravensville Cauldron podcast on your favorite podcast platform. If you haven't already, just search for the Ravensville Cauldron podcast. And again, make sure you hit the follow button to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Oh, and tell a friend about us, won't you? So until next time, family, see you soon.
The Ravensville Cauldron is a production of Small Raven Media. Today's episode was hosted by Ed Bolden Greer with co-host Jacob A. Garner. Audio engineering and sound design by Nick Devan at Nicky D Sound. Copyrighted 2024, Small Raven Media. All rights reserved.